to Mental Math Addition. This lesson is lesson 2 in a two-part video lesson on using complements for the number 10 to solve some addition problems mentally. Let's get started. Now, if you remember, in the first lesson, we talked about what is mental math. Well, traditionally, if you saw a 10-digit equation like this one written on paper, you would probably start at your 8 and add on. You'd say 8 plus 3 is 11, 11 plus 5 is 16, and you'd keep going until you've got all of the numbers added together and you would write your total at the end. That is the traditional way to solve an addition problem. Well, if you remember with mental math, what we're going to be doing is looking at an equation like this one, doing a little calculation in our head, and saying the answer out loud. Now, do you think that you could solve this long 10-digit equation in your head mentally? Yes, no, maybe? Well, at the end of class, we are going to go through this equation together, and you're going to learn how to solve it in your head and be able to begin to solve equations just like this one mentally. Some important math properties to remember before we begin are the associative property and the commutative property. Now, these sound like big words, and they are big words, but what they mean is really quite simple. For example, if I have the equation 1 plus 2 plus 3, we know that that totals 6. Now, the associative property just tells us that the order in which the addends are these numbers we're adding together, that the order that we group those numbers to add them does not matter. We're just adding all of the numbers together to find the total or the sum. So I can add 1 plus 2 first and get 3, and then add 3 plus 3 to get 6. Or I could group them 2 plus 3 first and get 5, and then add 5 plus the 1 and also get 6. I get the same answer. It doesn't matter which numbers I add first. And the commutative property says that changing the order of the numbers in an addition problem does not change the answer. For example, here's the equation 2 plus 3. Well, we know that equals 5, right? Well, what if I put the 3 first and then I add 2? 3 plus 2 also equals 5 because these numbers, 2 and 2 and 3 and 3, are the same numbers, just in a different order. Because I'm just adding them together, I'll get the same answer. So I can change the order of the numbers in an addition problem and it won't change the answer. Now, these properties become important, especially with mental math, because sometimes we're going to be going through the addition equations and not adding in order. We're going to start looking for those complements of 10 and then adding those 10s first to make the equations easier to solve. And we can do that with addition. We can add any number in any order as long as we add them all together to find the sum. Now, if you remember from the last lesson, we talked about what is a complement. Well, a complement are those two numbers that fit together perfectly to make a complete whole. And we went through the complements for the number 10 because in mental math, 10 is a very friendly number. These numbers that end in 0 are much easier to work with and hold in our head. So we practiced all of those number pairs, those two numbers that add together to total 10. If you're not familiar with the complements of 10, go back and watch that video and then practice these complements over and over again. The complements for the number 10 are 1, 9, 2, 8, 3, 7, 4, 6, 5, and 5. Now, remember, you can switch the order and you can do 6 and 4, 7 and 3, 8 and 2, 9 and 1. It doesn't matter the order. These numbers added together will all give us 10. Go ahead and keep practicing these if you don't have them memorized. Just say them over and over again. 1, 9, 2, 8, 3, 7, 4, 6, 5, 5, 6, 4, 7, 3, 8, 2, 9, and 1. Because if you get these complements memorized, you're going to be able to quickly get to the number 10 when you start solving some longer addition problems. And that is what we are going to be working with today. Today, we're going to go through several examples of how to use this two-step strategy of finding the complements for the number 10 and then adding those 10s together first to help us solve equations mentally in our head. Let's look at this first example. We have the equation 2 plus 6 plus 8 plus 4. Now, I am not going to add in order. I'm not going to add 2 plus 6 first. I want you to start to think, look for complements. Look for those number pairs that add to 10. So I'm going to start with this number 2. Now I don't have to start with 2, I can start with any number, but because 2 is the first number in the equation, for this one I'll just start with a 2. And instead of adding 2 plus 6, I'm going to think, what is my complement of the number 2? 2 plus what makes 10? Oh, yes, it's an 8. And look, there's an 8 in this equation. So I'm going to mark off my 2, mark off my 8, and write a little 10 up here. Now, in mental math, you are probably not going to be marking off numbers and writing little 10s or dash marks to show your work, because our goal is that we could just look at this equation and do the calculation in our head and say the answer out loud. But when you're first learning a strategy, it is fine. Actually, it's really good to mark off the numbers you've already added and keep track of them on your paper. This way, you won't lose track of any numbers, because if I forget to add a number, or if I add an extra number, I'm going to get the wrong answer. And when we're rearranging the numbers in the equation, it becomes very easy to lose track of the details. So while you're first learning the strategy, go ahead, mark off those 10s that you find first. And then the more you practice, you will begin to be able to solve these equations in your head, and you won't need to even write on the paper like this. Okay, let's go back to our equation. So we know 2 and 8 are complements and they total 10. Now let's move to our 6 and think, well, what's my complement of 6? It's a 4. 6 and 4 are complements. They make 10. So I'm going to mark off my 6, mark off my 4. Now, I've accounted for all of the numbers in the equation. I've simplified the equation down to 10 plus 10. Do you think that you could mentally add 10 plus 10? Sure, 10 plus 10 is 20. See, getting to those tens is so much easier to add, especially in our head. And it's a little faster than going in order, 2 plus 6 plus 8 plus 4. I don't have to worry about carrying. I just find those tens and then add the tens together, and we could even skip count. 2 sets of 10, 10, 20 is the answer. Let's look at this equation. There are 6 numbers in this equation. Now, again, we're not going to add in order. We're not going to add 3 plus 5. We're going to look for those complements of 10 first. So let's start with our 3 and think, what is my complement of the number 3? What do I add to 3 to get 10? That's right, 7. So I'm going to mark off my 3, mark off my 7, and this time I just wrote a little dash mark to show I have one set of 10. Just makes it a little bit faster. Okay, we've accounted for the 3 and the 7. Let's move to the 5. Think, what is my complement of 5? 5 and 5 make 10. And there's another 5 in this equation, so I have another set of 10. I'm going to mark off both 5s and write that dash mark. Now let's move to the 9. Oh, this one's easy. Look, we have the 9 and the 1 right next to each other. We know they're complements. 9 and 1 make 10. Let's mark off the 9, mark off the 1, and put the little dash mark up here. Now we've accounted for all of the numbers. We've simplified the equation down to 1, 2, 3 sets of 10. Do you think you could mentally add 10 plus 10 plus 10? Sure. We could even skip count, right? Let's skip count. 10, 20, 30, and 30 is the answer. Now, if you know multiplication, you could have just multiplied. Well, I have 3 sets of 10, so 3 times 10 is 30. All right, now these are nice clean equations. Every number in the equation has a complement, and our answers are these nice round numbers that end in 0. But in the real world, when you are doing your math homework, or maybe you're taking a test, you might see equations like these. Like this one has an extra number, or this equation does not have any complements at all. But we can still use our strategy of finding the complements for the number 10 and then adding to help us solve these equations mentally. Let's start with this one. And I'm going to, again, just start with my number 5, but I'm not going to add 5 plus 6 first. I'm going to think, what is my complement of the number 5? It's a 5. That's right. And there's another 5 in this equation. So let's mark off those 2 5s and we'll write our little 10 up there. All right, let's move to the 6. Think, what is my complement of 6? 6 and 4 make 10, and there's a 4 in this equation, so let's mark off that 6, mark off that 4. All right, now I have a 2. Now, I've already added these numbers, so I can't add them again. And my complement of the number 2 is an 8, and there's no 8 in this equation, so now I'm ready to add. I found the complements for 10 first, as many as I could find. I have an extra 2, so we'll just add our 10s first. Can you mentally add 10 plus 10? Yes, it's 20, and then just add 20 plus the 2, and we get 22. So again, finding those 10s first really makes addition a lot faster and a little easier too. Now, let's look at this equation. It is written vertically. Sometimes you'll see that. These equations can be written horizontally across or vertically up and down. They just mean the same thing. We're adding all of the numbers together to find that total or the sum. Let's start with this 7. Now, there are no complements in this equation, but let's still think. What is my complement of 7? Did you say it's a 3? That's correct. 7 and 3 are complements. Now, there isn't a 3 in this equation, but do you see any numbers that add to 3? That's right, the 2 and the 1. If we add those two together, we get 3. And now we can see 7 and 3 are complements. They make 10. So we know right from the start that these three numbers, 7 plus 2 plus 1, equals 10. 2 and 1 make 3, and 3 and 7 are complements. They bring us up to 10. And now I have 7 left over, so I'm ready to add. Can you mentally add 10 plus 7? Sure, 10 plus 7 is 17. Even if you don't have complements in an equation, look for numbers that might add to 10, even if it's more than 2. Just getting to 10 is going to make solving addition problems so much easier and faster for you. Okay, let's do a little bit of practice. I'm going to bring up an equation on the screen and we'll work through it together to see if we can use the strategy of finding the complements of 10 and then adding. And if you want to make this a little more fun, see if you can solve it before I do. Are you ready? Go. We have the equation 2 plus 7 plus 8 plus 3. First step, look for complements of 10. Do you see any numbers that add to 10? Then add them together. All right, let's work through it together. Let's start at this 2. What is my complement of 2? It's an 8. 2 and 8 make 10. There's one set. All right, let's move to our 7. Do you already see it? What's my complement of 7? That's right, it's a 3. 7 and 3 make 10. I've accounted for all of my numbers. I have 2 sets of 10. What is 10 plus 10? 10, 20 is the answer. I hope you got 20. If not, keep practicing. That's okay. Mental math strategies do take practice. Get those math facts memorized, your addition, your subtraction, your multiplication, and it's going to make math so much easier for you. Not even just mental math, but any math. Take the time to put in the effort to memorize your basic math facts. Okay, let's try another one. And let me give you a hint on this one. It's going to have one extra number that will not have a complement in the equation. Ready? Go. Take a couple seconds. See if you can add this equation. Don't add 6 plus 1. Use the strategy of finding complements and then adding. Okay, did you get the answer? Let's work through it together and see if you got the right answer. Let's start with our 6 and think, what's my complement of 6? 6 and 4 make 10. There's one set of 10. Let's move to our 1. 1 and 9 make 10. There's 2 sets of 10. I'm left with a 5. So now I can quickly mentally add 10 plus 5. And I know the answer is 10, 20, 25. I hope you got 25. And again, if not, that's okay. Just keep practicing and you will begin to master this strategy. All right, now I wanted to show you another way that finding the complements for 10 can be helpful. And that is in solving equations like this one, 8 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5. If you notice, again, there are no complements in this equation. And there's actually no numbers that we could add together to get to 10. So what we're going to do this time is instead of adding numbers together to get 10, we're going to break some numbers apart and then add to get the 10s. And I'll show you what I mean. Let's start with this 8. And again, I just like to start with the first number, but you can start with any number. And I'm going to think, well, what is my complement of 8? It's a 2. Now, there aren't any 2's in this equation, but this number 3 has a 2 in it. I can break it apart to 2 plus 1. Now, I can do this in addition as long as my total stays the same. I have a 2 and a 1, and those do total 3, so I haven't changed the total of the equation at all. I'm just breaking the number apart so that I can give the 2 from the 3 to the 8. And if I give the 2 from the 3 to the 8, I know that's one set of 10 right there. Now, this is where it becomes important to pay attention to the details because I also have this 1 now. I can't lose track of this 1 because if I just add 2 and 8 and then start adding 4 and 5, I'm not going to get the right answer unless I also add this 1. I have to keep the total the same. So I couldn't have broken this number apart to 2 plus 2. That doesn't equal 3. I have to make sure when I break the number apart that it still equals this number. And we have 2 and 8. There's one set of 10. Now we have 1, a 4, and a 5 left. Now we can quickly and easily see that 1 and 4 add together to make 5, and 5 and 5 are complements to make 10. And so we can add 10 plus 10 very quickly in our head and again get the answer of 20. So this way is a little more complicated, but the more you practice it, you'll see it's really not that difficult. We just have to learn to keep track of numbers in our head. So if there aren't any complements and I want to try to use the strategy of tens to add, just you can break a couple numbers apart. Give 2 from this 3 to your 8, and there's a 10. Now you have 1, give that 1 to the 4 and the 5, and there's another set of 10. Okay, let's try another one. Here's the equation 9 plus 5 plus 3 plus 4 plus 7. Now, remember, our first step is to scan for complements. Are there any numbers that add to 10 in this equation? Yes, there are. The 3 and the 7, they are complements. So let's start with those. We'll mark those off and we'll put a little 10 up there. We already know those two total 10. Okay, now we're left with a 9, a 5, and a 4. These numbers are not complements, but let's break this 5 apart. Let's take 1 from the 5 and give it to the 9. And that would quickly give us another set of 10, right? 9 and 1 make 10. But when I took the 1 from the 5, that left how many? 4. And I have to remember to add that 4 still. So now I've accounted for the 9, the 5, the 3, and the 7. I still have this 4, and I still have this 4. I don't have any more complements, so now I'm ready to add. I have one set of 10 plus the second set of 10 plus 4 plus 4. And we could probably add this in our head if we just go 10 plus 10 is 20. Now maybe you already know 4 plus 4 is 8, and so you could just add 20 plus 8 and get the correct answer of 28. Or you could go 10 plus 10 is 20, 20 plus 4 is 24, 24 plus 4 is 28. Either way works. Again, we're just adding all of the numbers together to find that total or the sum. Okay, now here is this long 10-digit equation from the beginning of this lesson. Do you think that you could solve it mentally now using our strategy of finding complements for the number 10 and then adding? Let's give it a try. And again, I'm going to mark off the numbers so that we can keep track of them. But the more you practice, the better you will become at this strategy and you'll be able to solve these kind of equations in your head. Okay, are you ready? Let's start with our 8. Now we're not going to add in order. We're not going to add 8 plus 3. We're going to look at that 8 and think, what's my complement of 8? It's a 2, and there's a 2 in this equation. We'll mark off the 8, mark off the 2. So far, we have one set of 10. Let's move to our 3 and think, what's my complement of 3? What do I add to 3 to get 10? It's a 7. There's a 7 in this equation, so we'll mark off the 3, mark off the 7. Now we have 2 sets of 10. Move to the 5. What is my complement of 5? 5 plus what makes 10? 5 and 5. There's a 5 in this equation. We'll mark off the 5s, and now we have 3 sets of 10. Let's look at our 6. 6 plus what makes 10? 6 and 4, that's right, they are complements. Mark off your 6, mark off your 4. Now we have 1, 2, 3, 4 sets of 10, and we have the number 9 and a 1 left, and we know 9 plus 1 equals 10. 9 and 1 are complements. Let's mark off the 9, mark off the 1. We have accounted for every number in the equation. We have simplified it down to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sets of 10. Do you think you could mentally add 10 plus 10 plus 10 plus 10 plus 10? Sure, we could quickly skip count, right? 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and 50 is the answer. Now, if you know multiplication, you also could have multiplied. I have 5 sets of 10, so 5 times 10 equals 50. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining me in class today. I hope you enjoyed using this strategy of finding the complements for the number 10 to add. I think this strategy is so much fun, especially if you get those basic math facts memorized, especially your complements for the number 10. Then you can really start solving some long addition problems quickly and mentally.